with the words, "Reader, look not on his picture, but his book." Why would Ben Jonson point the reader away from the face of Shakespeare and compel men to look upon the book instead? A dedication that seems to parallel the monument at Holy Trinity Church.
On the inscription of the monument, "See living art," but paid to serve his wit. I'm paraphrasing there, but it mentions living art and looking at the page rather than the monument.
Are these allusions made by the men who knew the real William Shakespeare, that he was simply a mask or front man for Francis Bacon?
Bacon paid him off to go and keep his mouth shut.
The monument at Holy Trinity Church refers to the page that serves Shakespeare's wit. But when one looks upon the page beneath his hand, it turns out to be blank. Some Baconians believe this is a secret code, alerting the reader that the Stratford man himself wrote nothing. The empty page is said to match the empty expression on the face of Shakespeare, who Baconians argue could barely write his name.
It's actually a big embarrassment to, you could say, the academic fraternity that believed the actor wrote the plays.
The question of Shakespeare's literacy is often mentioned because of the few known signatures he left behind. As one writer puts it, the scrawling, uncertain method of their execution stamps Shakespeare as unfamiliar with the use of a pen.
Perhaps a modern equivalent of this is to say, how good is your signature on your credit card? How good is your signature when you sign your name in a shop or on a bank transaction or whatever? There are several signatures which survive of Shakespeare. How good would you like them to be?
While Baconians argue that Shakespeare lacked experience, Edmondson points out that, as the son of a glove maker, he was uniquely qualified.
There's lots of references to different kinds of leather. For example, Feste's line in Act 3, Scene 1 of Twelfth Night about someone's wit being like a cheverel glove. Cheverel, as the son of a glove maker, Shakespeare would have known, is a kind of kid skin which stretches and stretches and stretches when you're making the gloves. It's a very soft, supple material to work with. And here you have it immersed in the wordplay of one of Shakespeare's clowns. Francis Bacon knew nothing about different kinds of leather, I would suggest. Actually, you could turn this whole thing on its head and say that Shakespeare wrote Bacon, which is something that a lot of people don't suggest, because why bother to do it that way around?
One of the problems is the Shakespearean trust is that while these objections come up to William Shakespeare being the author of the plays, they refuse to investigate the contrary evidence which has been put forward to them. They refuse to look into it. They refuse to look into the cipher codes that Bacon incorporated in the first folios, for instance.
Bacon uses this cipher in the Shakespeare work and his own, and in the work under his own name. But he also, in doing that, signs his name and the name of the Rosicrucian fraternity.
This code system of writing he used all his entire life.
The examination of the cipher codes in Shakespeare's plays have filled hundreds of books and essays over the last few centuries. But perhaps the most specific evidence are the presence of Baconian and Rosicrucian emblems in the Great Folio of 1623 and in earlier works by Shakespeare. Bacon's light A and dark A symbol appears, representing the two Shakespeares, Apollo and Athena. Meanwhile, this Rosicrucian emblem, featuring the god Pan, is found prominently throughout the work. Other mystical headpieces with Rosicrucian symbolism are found both in the Shakespeare Folio of 1623 and in works openly published by Sir Francis Bacon. The varied symbols and ciphers clearly mark the presence of Bacon and his Rosicrucian fraternity, while to what extent they were involved in the writing of the plays remains a matter of debate. But perhaps the most compelling evidence is that the works of Shakespeare helped to accomplish exactly what Bacon and his Knights of the Helmet set out to achieve. While the numbers vary, the plays are said to have developed some 20,000 words for the English language, with some words being created, older words being revived, and current words being used in new ways. Could the actor from Stratford, with a limited education, have accomplished this coincidentally? The Shakespeare controversy was illustrated quite clearly by Masonic author Manly P. Hall in his book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, where he reveals the veiled purpose behind the writing of the plays. He says, Sir Francis Bacon, the Rosicrucian initiate, wrote into the Shakespearean plays the secret teachings of the fraternity of the Rose and Cross, and the true rituals of the Masonic order. The Bacon-Shakespeare controversy involves the most profound aspects of science, religion, and ethics. He who solves its mystery may yet find therein the key to the supposedly lost wisdom of antiquity. The lost wisdom that Hall refers to is said to have begun in ancient Atlantis. Is this the real key to understanding Shakespeare? Incredibly, it may be said that the plays themselves represent the whole confusion of America's foundation. For while Shakespeare contains a clear representation of Christianity, with some 1,200 biblical references, along with them are plays with openly pagan and magical themes. Like the symbol of the Rose and Cross, the plays combine the teachings of Christianity with the wisdom of the mystery religion. The purpose in blending religions in this way might have been to avoid the wars and conflicts that have afflicted men over the centuries. Bacon, who saw religious persecution in his own day, may have inherited this view from an earlier Masonic influence, the Knights Templar.
The whole episode of the fall of the Knights Templar is a matter of conflicting historical controversy.
We do know that when they left the Holy Land, the order had increased in numbers and power, and by the beginning of the 1200s, they had returned to Europe, and the Knights Templar then became the dominant financial force in Europe.
The Templars were the people that loaned the money. Well, of course, the popes and people to whom the money was, they owned the money, they could get rid of their debt by getting rid of the Templars, and they did.
But in addition to the issue of debt, the Templars were accused for embracing certain religious doctrines they had picked up during their time in the Holy Land. It is said they began to combine the teachings of Christianity with the influence of Islam and Judaism, as well as spin-off cults known as the Yazidi and the Hashashin.
What people did not understand is they had adopted the teachings of the ancient esoteric religions.
And they were decreed by the Pope in 1308 in Europe and 1309 in England that the Templars should be disbanded, if not hunted down and killed.
Many Templars were tortured under the Inquisition and even burned at the stake for heresy. But some of them escaped.
And a lot of them, I think, went underground, because by no means did the dragnet, if you will, capture all of them. A lot of them fled to Scotland.
They had to go into hiding. And one of the places they found to hide was the Masonic Lodge.
There's no question but that the Knights Templar are the real fulcrum of the latter development of Freemasonry. And that's not saying that Freemasonry did not pre-exist the Knights Templar. It did, as the builders, as guilds of builders throughout Europe.
It is from the influence of the Knights Templar that many believe Masonry began to develop its modern philosophy. A philosophy literally carved in stone,